Coming up in this episode is a collaborative project where I'll be making good use of two 21st century tools courtesy of my good friend Jared, a CNC router and a 3D resin printer. The question that I have is using technology such as this cheating, and how exactly do I feel about it? Also, after many years of pain and anguish from using cheap, no-brand knockoff models, I finally took the plunge and bought myself a decent airbrush, specifically for this project. Will there be any noticeable differences, or have I just wasted my money? Now. Well, grab yourself a fine beverage, get yourself comfy, let's answer those questions and see how all this came together. So, don't go away. You remember Jared, don't you?
G'day.
He's the chap that I made one of those masks for a while back. Well, he and I have been working together on projects for the best part of the last 20 years, and in that time he's built himself a fantastic replica of the 1980s TARDIS exterior prop. You know, the one designed by Tom Yardley Jones. Not only that, but he's also built an absolutely stunning recreation of the Mike Kelt TARDIS console, complete with lights, interactive sound effects, and a fully operational time rotor. It really is a spectacle to behold. I can say without exaggeration that both of these builds are the best replicas that I've ever had the pleasure to bear witness to, so we're in exquisite company today, I can assure you. The only minor crinkle in our working relationship is the 9,500 miles that separates us, but thankfully in this era of the internet, cheap phone calls and digital file transfer, we don't let such trivial matters of geography and time difference hinder us. No, we just get on with it. And speaking of which, our task today is to recreate the Season 18 TARDIS Console Room set in diorama form for a client. There won't be a console included here as the client already has one, so we're just dealing with the base and the walls for this project. Using a copy of the BBC set plans that came to me from the series producer John Nathan Turner's personal collection, and castings of the wall roundels taken from the original BBC moulds, I furiously began to thrash out some numbers. With these detailed measurements, Jared and I then immediately set about devising a set of working schematics. After a lot of back and forth between us, we ended up with an extremely accurate recreation of the console room in digital three-dimensional space, and I'll freely admit that we're both incredibly pleased with the results. It really does look so authentic. While we're at it, we also did this variation too, but that's a story for another time. Back to our project though, next all we had to do was turn that computer-based model into a physical reality.
Hello, it's Jared for PB Props and Models, and Anthony's asked me to demonstrate a little bit about the CNC machine that I have here and how I'm going to be using it to make some parts for an upcoming build. And so essentially what I've done is I've brought in these shapes from Adobe Illustrator, and they've imported quite nicely into a program called Easel to cut these shapes out. Now I've got a piece of 3mm acrylic here, and I'm going to first of all home the machine to the bottom left hand corner of this scrap piece here, and then get this thing started so that it'll cut out these shapes, hopefully. So the first thing I need to do is set the home position for the router. So I'm just going to hit the carve button up here, and it'll ask me to home the machine, but I'm actually not going to do it automatically. I'm going to unlock it first without homing it, and then confirm that my material thickness is 3mm and that the material is secure. And all I've done here is to just screwed it down using washers into my waste board here. And then I just click on material is secure, and it confirms that the bit size is 1mm, and I'm going to manually zero my work. And using the joystick here, let's bring the machine down to about there. There is good. And then I just check and see, which is very difficult to see here. Just see if I can. You may or may not see there is a bit in there where that red knob is there. It'll be sitting just in there somewhere. Oh, yep, there it is. You can just see it in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the bit, and I'm going to turn my vacuum cleaner on for its dust extraction here. Nice dust collector there, so I don't have to go through too many vacuum bags. And I'm going to set the spindle to on and tell the machine that the spindle is on, and hit the carve button and hope for the best. And of course put the dust chute down as well. So far so good. So we just about cut the door out, the internal door, and that's the second to last piece of this cut. And according to Easel, this whole process was supposed to take around 40 minutes, but it's always out by about 20, so it's all up about an hour.
And here are all those parts fresh off the mill. Thanks, Jared. Now, while they do look lovely and are totally accurate to our model, just like when I had some laser cutting done a few years back, this whole process does seem to feel like cheating to me, which is clearly ridiculous, I know. I think it's all down to the fact that I didn't physically make any of this with my dainty little hands, as per my original plan. Thing is, this is something that I have to get used to. CNC machining is a tool just like any other, and let's be frank here. Without our initial planning, calculating and modelling, none of this would exist anyway. No, really I should look at this as a time saver, just like a pneumatic nailer or a palm sander. Yeah, I could do it by hand, but this is far quicker, which is especially important when you're working to a deadline. I suppose in a way, it's a bit like having another me around to do the laboriously boring bits, while I can concentrate on the other more interesting aspects of the project that need an element of artistic finesse and hands-on manual tweaking. I also had the same issue with the 3D printing as well, which I'll get to next. As amazing as 3D printing is, we did experience some teething troubles when it came to the wall separator columns. The roundels, on the other hand, were perfectly fine and trouble-free. But these troubles did cause us a few months' worth of delays, mainly due to the back-and-forth nature between the UK and Australia. Our initial set of columns had two issues, the first being that they warped and splayed completely out of true. This was more than likely caused due to the combination of the column's printed wall thickness being far too thin, and there being also absolutely no internal support to help them hold their shape. The second issue was that there was absolutely no way to mount them to the wall panels themselves. This was a painfully stupid oversight, I know, so for Mark II we corrected and allowed for all this. Now that we had a mounting plate running all the way up the back of the columns for the walls to physically attach to, and we'd added some internal supports to compensate for the initial warping, there was now an even greater issue on our hands. On the visible surface, the print had this unsightly pinch at each and every point where there was a rear support piece. I suspect this fading was down to exposure times, possibly it was too quick and maybe we should have slowed it down a tad. Oh well, you live and learn. For version 3, however, we dispensed entirely with the rear support braces so that we didn't have to waste even more time tinkering and experimenting with exposure times. Instead, we just simply enlarged the wall thickness of the columns to compensate, and, well, this obviously seemed to work, so result. We now had a wonderful set of perfectly formed miniature columns ready to be installed, as well as a variety of roundels, so it was time to start putting it all together and seeing what we had. Well, doesn't that look wonderful? But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, shall we? As surprisingly, there's still a hell of a lot to be done yet, and I've barely even started. Obviously I'm going to need to glue all this together, but I'll only be partially doing that, as all this needs to be flat packed in readiness for its transit across the Atlantic. What I'm going to do is assemble it as 3 freestanding complete wall modules and a base, and if the client wishes to stick them all together once she receives it, then that's her choice, but to be honest, it won't really need that. There's also a certain amount of fabric cobbling to be done here too. I need to detail up the single door, make the scanner screen, add some trim detail along the tops of the walls, and lay up a couple of doors to give them their correct depth. After that, I'll need to build a base. Looking at it here, it seems like it needs to be about 50 centimeters or so wide, about the same deep, and whatever the hell I feel like for its height, but that bit doesn't really matter right now. You see those 3 rounder walls at the back there? Well, they're going to be lit, so I need to make up a box to house the strip LED lights that will provide the illumination. I'll make it as a separate unit with a 9-volt battery power supply and a simple on-off switch for the activation. I've also got to paint all this as well, but we'll get to that in due course. Right, down to business. Now I'm at a stage where I can actually start doing some hands-on work. As you know, I've already done, or I say we have already done the 3D printing and the CNC cutting. So my job now is to clean all this up and make sure it all fits together, and that's pretty much what I'm going to do. And to do that, I need to sand both of these parts down. Now if you've seen my other videos, the 3D printing that I did before was, what was it called, FDM printing. Now I had a real challenge sanding that down, mainly because of the sound. You can probably hear that. Now that sound goes right through me. But anyway, this is a resin print, so it's not going to be as bad, but I probably will just have to grin and bear it. So first things first, let's get a bit of organisation done. I've got some detail pieces here. So I think I will start by just going through some of these panels and buffing them down. This grey here is just, it's actually spray paint. But yeah, okay, let's start. So this is basically just to clean the pieces up. So what I want to do is buff this down to accept the proper paint that I'll be using later on. But also, this is, because it's made of acrylic, this is the reverse side and it's very glossy. Now I want to get rid of all of that and give that a little bit of a key. I don't have to sand it too hard. I'm not trying to put marks in it. I just want to lightly buff it and give it a bit of a key and get rid of some of the cack that's on here. So oh yeah, that works. Just a little bit of IPA there. IPA, the soul of everything more or less. Thankfully, because this is resin, and it's not particularly hard resin or resilient resin, so I can actually go through it quite quickly, which is beneficial to me because I'm on a deadline as always with this sort of thing. And of course, the more time that passes while I'm building these things, the less money I make. And obviously, I'm not a charity. And when you employ someone to do a scratch build for you, you're not actually paying for the product, you're paying for their time. So I've got to try and make my time as efficient as possible. So thankfully for this particular resin is quite easygoing. But yeah, one day I really must make a video on how you commission someone to make you something, because you'll be surprised about the amount of people who get in touch with me and say, oh, PB Props, could you make me a full-size TARDIS for £50? Not realising that it doesn't quite work that way. small bugbear, but you know, not everybody knows this sort of thing. Because to be honest, when you do employ someone to make you something, you're not just paying for the materials, you are actually paying for their time. In fact, if you want to look at it in any particular way, when you commission someone, look at it as if you are employing them. So if you come to the idea of, oh, how much do you charge? Well, go by a daily rate, and whatever is the minimum that you're willing to work for, start there. Don't forget you're also paying for skilled work here. Not that I'm trying to lecture you or anything, but this happens rather a lot. People do say to me, can you build me this for £50 or £75? And you think, yeah, I'm going to work for 12 weeks for £75. Because actually, basic minimum wage is around £9, I think it is. And I earn, put it this way, it's literally pennies on the hour, and sometimes not even that. And it is demoralising. But, like I said, work is work, so that's why I've got to go as quickly as I possibly can without cutting corners. Right, and just to explain what I was doing there, whenever you print, you always get a slight lip just on the printing edge there, and it bows out very slightly. Now, for me to attach this to that, there's a slot, as you saw. It goes in like that. Now, with that lip, it was actually pushing the wall piece away at the top and the bottom. So what I just did is I just took a file and very carefully filed it away. So now this can slot in rather snugly all the way down, which makes gluing this together a lot easier. So here's one that I haven't trimmed, and yes, it does. No, it doesn't, because that's another. No, hang on, let me find one that actually works. Oh, I have trimmed that one as well. But yeah, that's how it kind of will look. Hang on. But yeah, if I have one where it doesn't have this bit taken out at the top, what will happen is the wall will be pushed out very. This is obviously exaggerated. Will be pushed out that way, and therefore not make a solid join all the way down here. So that is where we're headed, something along those lines. Anyway, I'm going to carry on with this, and it is quite torture because of the sound it makes when I'm filing away. But yeah, I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got about another 4 or 5 to do. Now we're into the meat of the stuff. So, situation report is, I have just finished cleaning up the walls and the columns. Now, you saw me sand those down and smooth them with a bit of wire wool to get rid of any and every print line. So that's all done now. So what I can start doing is concentrating myself and my efforts on all the detail stuff. Now, things like the scanner screen wall. Obviously, it's not just a flat piece like that. It has depth this way and a screen, so that's what all these little parts are for. Now, these have been CNC'd out, but I have had to do a little bit of jiggery-pokery and a bit of sanding to make them fit. One of the big questions is, should I glue the columns on first and then do the details, or do it the other way around? Either way, there's always going to be some sort of faffing. The way I see it is with something like this, because I'm going to need to lay the thing flat so I can do all the glue up like this, it would be easier if there weren't any columns in the way. So that's what I'm going to do. So I do have a lot more to scratch build for this, because the client, what she wants is to have different views on the scanner screen. So I have the parts to make up the depth of the thing, like so, with this thing sitting on, not like that, but on the top. And then behind all that, I need to have some sort of receiver where we can slide in little paper printouts with different views on it. I think I've got an idea, but essentially I'm going to make it up as I go along with whatever I've got to hand in terms of plastic card offcuts. So yeah, I think I'm going to get on with gluing this up. load the brush. Do one side, get that working. A little bit on there, just to get down into the seam line. And a liberal amount up this side. And that should be enough, and then I can continue with the other side. So, luckily I've got my glasses on, I can see what I'm doing. Don't want to go too much, just want enough on there. I don't particularly want it to squeeze out. I'm sure it is going to squeeze out, but I do have my brush to sort all that out. So clean that off. Actually, if I open up the solvent weld, that'll help. So I'm just going to move some of this around. This just helps prevent any squeeze out, and it is actually biting in and softening the plastic, the acrylic in this case, while I do this. So now's about the time I should start putting it on. Make sure, right, okay. Pretty much got one shot at this. Righty-ho, since you last saw this, things have changed a little bit. I've just put on this backer plate, and in addition to that, just to tidy things up, I put a little bit of strip plastic card all the way around. And if you can look in there, we've now got a little slot where we can put our images, because as I said before, my client wants to be able to have various images shown on here. So just for demonstrational purposes, I've got a little Dalek here saying exterminate. So there is an option. So when on display, she can have that if she wants, or whatever else she wants. I think she said she wants Sutek to be in here as well. So from series or season 12, 13, I don't know. It's been ages since I watched it. But anyway, that is basically it. So not bad for kind of made up as I went along, but I had a general idea. So anyway, the next thing to do, I think, is make the doors. Here we go. So taking the squeeze out here. Yeah, perfect. Now this is going to be painted, so I don't have to worry about any of this, so no masking is required. Just straightforward grey, because on season 18, 19 and 20, from that point onwards, these roundels on the double doors were completely opaque because they were painted in essentially TV white. I'm just doing the lighting. You haven't missed much. I've just started wiring it all together. There's a reason why I've kind of skipped ahead, is because I really don't want to do this on camera. But anyways, it's long and boring, and this is pretty much what I'm doing. Just tin the ends. I really want to get myself a proper setup. Right, shall we see if this travesty works? Yay, look at that, it works. May not be the neatest, but at least it does work. I'm happy about that. Okay, I've now got to transplant this into the lighting box. Right, I'm using the glue gun and I'm going to stick all this down for two reasons. One, to sort of seal the contacts, because I haven't got any shrink wrap or anything along those lines. But the other reason is to add a bit of extra stickability to the little backings that's on this, because I know that after a while this 3M strip that this is all stuck to sort of lets go, so I'm going to give it a bit of a helping hand with this. So hold your breath and let's see if that works. And try not to cook the damn thing as I do it. Now, does it still work? Have a look. Yay, it still works. Don't know if you can see that, but it still works. Right, that's me done. So here we are. As you can see, I've got everything set up and I'm at the most important part. This is where everything could potentially go wrong. I'm on the final stretch and what I'm going to be doing is painting it. In particular, I'm going to be airbrushing it. And to do it this time round, I'll be using this. This is a brand new Iwata Eclipse. Now this costs about 4 or 5 times more expensive than all the other brushes I've been using in the past. And it's predominantly because of those that it's put me off of airbrushing in the first place. This is why I'm so nervous. All my other airbrushes have been absolute garbage. This one cost just shy of £200. Now, what I need to do is get over my nerves and just start painting. So in that light, I've already got my compressor here charged to 25 psi. I've got my colour mixed up. Now all I really need to do is apply that to that and not cock it up. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But you'll see I've already pre-primed this. I'm going to use the primer as a sort of pre-shading. Now, this grey here is a very pale grey. It's somewhat lighter than this. So what I'm going to use is the difference between the two tones. It's a sort of shading. So I'll be giving a bit of a spray over and then allowing that paint to lay down, but hopefully it won't completely mask all the indents and all the little details. So in a way, it will create its own little shadows. Let me sort myself out and I'll join you back in just a moment and we'll start applying some colour. Air on and paint. So, guess what I'm going to be doing now? I'm going to have to sand all this down and reprime it. I'm not best pleased. I don't know if you've noticed, but when I was spraying this, my compressor hiccuped and splattered paint all over this. Now, that is extraordinarily annoying, and I have to say I am very frustrated, and I'm sweating like a pig on heat. So I'm going to have to sand all of this down, reprime it, and start again. However, having thought about this and how much time this is taking, I think I'm going to go and find a spray can and do it. So, situation report. As you can probably see, all of these panels are now back to being grey, and that's the primer grey. Anyway, I'm actually really happy with the brush, but I'm not going to be airbrushing this. I've actually gone out and spent more money on yet more paint, been running around the town, and eventually, after much arsing about, I found this paint. Now, this is from the local Warhammer shop. Went in there, very nice service from them. This seems to be a decent match to what I was using previously with the airbrush. It's called Grey Sear. So I had to buy 2 of them. So that's another £25. Do you know how much I spent on paint on this one piece? Over £100 now. But anyway, I haven't got time to mess around. I've just got to go with this. I'm not going to bother with the airbrush. I mean, I will airbrush. I'll probably airbrush the roundels, but not this. I just haven't got the time. I have to get this thing sprayed, this pale grey, by the end of today, because tomorrow, personal celebrations. Right, okay, I'll see you back over on the bench. I'm going to go and do it right now. Look, I'm going to say it, and I know I say this quite often, but we really are on the final stretch of the model. At the moment, I'm about to start working on the roundels, and here is one. This is 3D printed in resin, and I have to say I'm really amazed at the quality. And I don't just mean the quality of the print itself, but I mean the translucency of this thing. It does seem to mimic the way fiberglass is. So it might be a bit more translucent here and a bit less translucent over there. The only issue is fiberglass in its raw state is not this colour. It's actually a straw colour. Now to that end, I have mixed up some straw translucent paint, and I have done some experiments. There's a piece here, you can sort of see the various graduations of colour that I had, and I've come pretty much to the conclusion that I think I have it nailed down. Now this is brush painted, this is the final colour I've gone for. It's got a slight brown hue to it. Now again, as I said, it's brush painted, so it's on there rather thick, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to airbrush it on with mainly air and a little bit of colour. So without further ado, let's just get on with it, because this project is taking far too long. I have to say I'm really enjoying this airbrush now. Now that I've sort of nailed it down, I know all the problems that I was having before was down to the previous airbrush. There's certainly a lot more control on this, that's for sure. Ah, buggerations to it. Where did that go? Don't fall into the... Bugger, it's fallen into the radiator. I'll have to get that bit later. Before you click away, I do have a few final thoughts I would like to share with you, so please do stick around. The first is that I'm really happy to be at this point. The model, as you know, is completed and it looked really authentic, but then we did use a lot of research and design, and we used the original castings of the roundels and John Nathan Turner's set plans to make sure that the authenticity of this is really sound. And I think between me and Jared, I think we've done a really good job here. I don't usually say that, but on this one, I think I will allow it. Obviously there's no console, the client is going to put her own in here, so all I was doing really is just producing this bit. I've learned a couple of lessons as well, and it's predominantly to do with me always hand building stuff. I always knew it takes too long, it can be too slow. So for this particular project, we employed CNCing and 3D printing. I always felt like it was cheating, but seeing as it's us putting all the numbers in and making the models to start with, it can't be cheating. It's no different from any other tool. So what it really does do is save time. You put all the work in on the computer to start with, and then when it comes to the actual build, you can be concentrating on other things while the machines are doing their piece. So on that front, I'm very happy, and it's something I really should invest in as soon as I've got the space and the money for it. The other thing which came as a big surprise to me, not really because I've talked about this before, is airbrushes. You've heard me say in the past, you get what you pay for, and as you know, I have had a couple of very cheap models, shall we say. Now, I did for this project buy this Iwata. It's an Iwata Eclipse HPCS what a breath of fresh air that was. I mean, to compare this to something like the other two, it's just night and day. There's absolutely, well, you cannot compare them at all. If you're interested in airbrushing, I would recommend go and buy one of those cheap £20 ones, have a bit of a play with it, and if you like it, invest in something like this. Just this piece here, it's just a little bit under £200, but to be honest, this thing knocks the others out of the water. It is truly a fantastic piece, and I'm really looking forward to using that more often. So overall, it's very rare for me to say this, but I am genuinely pleased and very happy with the way all this turned out. Not just the model, but also the lessons that I've learned in terms of the CNCing and the printing, and of course the airbrushing. So without further ado, let's christen this model with Tom Baker from the appropriate season, season 18, and see how he looks. Oh, fuck!